Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Here's the thing, right? Michael Gove, completely different proposition. I want to get that out there from the start, lest anybody fear there's partisan politicking lying behind what I'm about to say to you, or anything that could be remotely, I tell you what, even anything that could be remotely described as a political opinion. I don't know yet what I'm going to do on the day of the referendum. Well, I know I'll probably cast a vote, but I don't know what that vote will be. I haven't got a clue. And I've said to you in the past that I've been really worried that there's a kind of democratic deficit on the Leave side, in that I find personally, and you're perfectly entitled not to, I find so many of the people lining up on the Leave side unpleasant. People I wouldn't let babysit, let alone decide the future of the country, that I'm really worried I'm not getting the picture that I need, I'm not getting the messages that I need to, if you like, temper my natural conservatism. Because like most people, I'm kind of a little bit wary of change. The bigger the change, the bigger the wariness. And yet, you know, there's some really strong views out there. We will be better off out, and I kind of want to know why. I don't want to be told, oh dear, if you go with the other lot it'll be awful. And they're both doing that now. Both doing it. It's not so much the pros as the cons. All we're getting is the cons from both sides. I kind of want the pros, and I'm excited that Michael Gove has thrown his hat into the ring on the Leave side, because I find, and again I appreciate not everybody does, I find Michael Gove a really interesting politician. I think he's probably my favourite politician in Britain at the moment, on any side of the House of Commons. Regular listeners to this programme have just redistributed their muesli all over their computer screens with the splutter that's greeted that observation. But if you've been paying attention over the last few years, that shouldn't come as a massive surprise. I like Gove, and one of the things I like about him is he thinks things through and then acts with conviction. So I get that out there now, lest anybody fear that what I'm about to say about Boris Johnson is coloured by any form of partisanship. It really isn't, because I reckon Gove had sleepless nights about this. Gove and Cameron go way back. You know what it says about Britain, that essentially the EU referendum is turning into a squabble between two former classmates at the same school, is quite remarkable. But Gove, I think, became friends with Cameron at Oxford or shortly afterwards. They go way back, and he's a very loyal friend, I'm told, Michael Gove. I don't think I've ever met the man, but you pick up stuff on the jungle drums. He really does value loyalty and friendship, and I think Gove would have had sleepless nights about choosing to align himself against his old friend, his boss, his Prime Minister. I think he'll have had sleepless nights about it. I really do. And I think in his heart of hearts, he's known pretty much all his life that he wants to leave the European Union, but in the cut and thrust of daily politicking, he knows that this is quite a serious blow that he has dealt to David Cameron, his friend and leader. Now we move on to Boris Johnson, and I'll tell you how I see it, and then you'll tell me how you see it. And the chances are you're seeing it a lot more clearly than I am, but this is how I'm seeing it. What's it called? You know, in poker, you get given your two hands. What's that? That's you get your two cards in your hand. They're your whole cards. And then you get your turn, flop, river, or turn, river, flop. Flop, turn, river. Yeah, I'm just doing that double bluff thing so you all think you'll beat me when we play poker together. I know exactly what I'm saying. So Boris has got two in the hole. We haven't even had the flop yet, right? We haven't even had the flop yet. So he's looking at his two cards in the hole, and he knows he's got to go all in. Before they've done the flop, the turn, or the river, he's got to go all in now, because it's his only chance of winning. He's got to boss everybody else off the table. He will never be leader of the Conservative Party, ever, if David Cameron wins this referendum. Full stop, period, game over. It won't happen. He spent his entire... Actually, that's not true. I do Boris Johnson a grave disservice. I was about to say he spent his entire life dreaming of being Prime Minister. He hasn't. When he was younger, he dreamt of being King of the World, according to, I think it was a prep school essay that he wrote. So it's not fair to say he's always dreamt of being Prime Minister. There was quite a significant period of his childhood when he dreamt about being World King. But since getting over that little obstacle, he's got dual citizenship as well, hasn't he? So I presume he had his sights on being President of America at one point. He's got the hair, hasn't he? Judging by the Republican race at the moment, he could pull that one off. So, actually, do you know what? Sorry, a bit of stream of consciousness this morning. I'd probably be more drawn towards finding the confidence to vote to leave the EU if I had American citizenship in the draw. Actually, it would seem like a less frightening prospect to cut ourselves loose from the European continent if you still had an in with America. So he's got his two cards in front of him. He's got his two in the hole. He's looking at the table, and he knows if this comes off, the vote to stay that Cameron is touting, promoting, that's it. He steps down as Prime Minister before the next general election, and whether there's a leadership battle or not, whoever Cameron anoints effectively walks it. And Cameron would almost certainly anoint George Osborne. So he's looking at this. He's not really in politics, Boris Johnson, to make your life better. He's certainly not in politics to make my life better. Boris Johnson is in politics to make Boris Johnson's life better. First, last, and always. It's why he can lie to you about closing London Underground ticket offices if you live here in London, like me. Absolute cast iron election pledge that he wouldn't close any. Soon there will be none left. None at all left. All gone, despite a cast iron election pledge. Same with firefighters, fire engines. We have fewer fire engines now than we did when Boris became mayor. We also have fewer fires, he would argue. A sort of rare outbreak of balance today. I'm sure I'll get over it before the travel news. But he's not come into politics to change the world into a better place for you and me. He's come into politics to feed his own ego and to achieve as much as he can achieve in as short a period of time as possible. And it's all gone pretty well, actually. I don't imagine he ever dreamt of being mayor of London, but it certainly has a much bigger cachet and a much bigger media presence than being a senior cabinet minister. So he's looked at his two cards. I don't know what he's got, a pair of sixes or something like that. He knows it's not the strongest hand in the world. He knows the flop, the turn and the river are coming. Everything could change. But he's got to go all in now. He can't wait to see what the other cards are. He can't sit there waiting for the flop or the turn or the... He's got to go all in now. Otherwise, there's no prize to play for. So he's looked at his cards and he's made a decision based entirely on personal ambition, and that personal ambition is more likely to be served by leading or being perceived as a senior player, a key figure in the Leave camp, than sitting tight and doing nothing. If he sits tight and does nothing, if he becomes a quiet voice on the stay side, or if he stays on the fence or silent, he doesn't have a prayer. He'll never be Prime Minister. Never be leader of the Conservative Party. This is his last chance, the last roll of the dice. He's even said himself, if the ball comes loose at the back of the scrum, that's a definition, really, of events being unpredictable. The ambition has never gone away. You can see it in his eyes. His piggy little eyes, ambition dripping from every pore. And yet, this is a big gamble. That's my analysis. They're almost certainly wrong. Please, give me a call if you think I am. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. Because you might think that I've got it completely wrong. I've just done the big man a grave, grave disservice. You might be able to point to evidence of him being principled, a man of integrity and honesty. You might disagree with his former employer, Max Hastings, who's described him in incredibly insulting terms historically and threatened to leave the country if Boris Johnson ever becomes Prime Minister. Disloyal, he's lied to both of his wives, he's lied to all of his employers, he's lied to voters since the year dot. He's the most dissembling and dishonest of politicians, but he retains an epic popularity that's easy to understand. You would love to be stuck in a lift with Boris Johnson. If you had to choose a politician to be stuck in a lift with, Boris Johnson would probably win all of our votes. I've just said Michael Gove is my favourite politician in the country at the moment, but I'd much rather be stuck in a lift with Boris. It'd just be more fun. Imagine turning up at a dinner party and finding that you'd been sat next to Boris Johnson. You'd be high-fiving yourself in the gents, or the ladies. You'd be over the moon. So make no mistake about that. Chutzpah, charm, warmth, comedy, value, it's all there. He's a lovely, lovely, lovely personality that he's got in many ways. And we're seeing an odd period in human history at the moment in the West, in politics, where personality seems to be a lot more important than policies or principles. It's all about personality at the moment. And here's the thing. I want to know what you think. You've met Boris. You've heard him speaking to Nick many, many times on the phone-in show that he does. You may have heard him speak to me about 1 million years ago before he bottled any future engagements. That was about the firefighters' strike, our last encounter. And you will have been in a better position than most people in Britain as an LBC listener, because remember, we became national relatively recently. Before that, we were confined to London, focused almost exclusively on London issues. As an LBC listener, I truly believe you are better qualified to comment on Boris Johnson's motivation in this instance than anyone else in the country, except perhaps his dad, who's been doing the rounds of interviews this morning. Slightly strange to hear someone's dad being interviewed about their political prospects. Found myself wondering whether we'd hear from Alan Johnson's Auntie Maureen before close of play today. But the Johnsons are a little bit special in that way. You, as an LBC listener, know more about Boris than just about everybody else in Britain, because you've heard him. You've looked into his eyes. You've been able to judge the timbre of his comments. So, what do you think? 0345 6060 973. Give me a call. Simple as that. Tell me what you think. Is he acting genuinely out of principle or out of personal ambition? And the other question that I think follows fast upon that you'll have to answer as well, is this. Does it matter? Because that's the really depressing conclusion I have personally arrived at in the last few hours. I only picked up the news. I don't know Wi-Fi. Picked up the news last night, thinking about it. I don't think it matters. I think everybody might even agree this morning that he's acting out of personal ambition rather than principle or anything that could be remotely described as politics. It's all about Boris. But actually, it doesn't really matter. It might well work. 034560 60973. And finally, if we do go down this road, what I'd love you to do, and I hate excluding people from ringing in, so there's plenty there for you to get your teeth into if you don't fit into the category I'm about to describe. Can we find people whose position will genuinely be determined by Boris Johnson? Somebody who is currently wavering? See, I might put myself in that category with regard to Michael Gove. Gove is the kind of character who could secure my vote. Is Boris Johnson likely to secure, switch, change, or really profoundly influence yours?